All right, I think we're going to get started this morning. Welcome to Flagship Friday. It is the last Flagship Friday of the year until we launch again next year. So don't be too sad because we do have some events coming up. My name is Karen Kearns. I'm the Entrepreneur in Residence, and I will talk to you a little bit about those events up front after we introduce our panelists today. So we have our moderators. I'm going to start with Nakaya Rucker, who is managing our chat and participating as our co-monitor.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Nakaya Rucker, and I serve as the External Relations Director of the University Library. And I'm also a part of this very dynamic electric team at the Student Innovation Center. And I want to encourage everyone to please make sure that you use the Q&A in order to ask questions, share your insights, any comments that might come up. Please do share them in the Q&A. We want this to be kind of like a kitchen table conversation where you all are invited into this discussion with us. We're not just talking at you, we're talking with you. And so we're excited to get this party started. So I will pass it off to Abram.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Abram Anders. I'm an associate professor of English and I direct our ISUCOM Foundation Courses program. I also do research in innovation and entrepreneurship and leadership communication. So I'm really excited to hear what our guest speaker will have to share with us today.
Great. And before I introduce Dr. Gopi, I will just share our regular Innovation Did You Know fact. And for this week, as you know, it's the last Flagship Friday of this year, but we do have coming up our Ignite Innovation Showcase, which is going to be formally launched April 16th through April 23rd. It is our first one, and we plan on doing it annually, and it will also be part of our State Fair Showcase on the Road. Nakaya Rucker can put if you wouldn't mind, Nakaya, putting the registration link in the chat. If you register for the showcase, you will get updates when we start launching the schedules so you know what will be available. They are 8 days packed with all sorts of activities, and everything will be accessible virtually. So we look forward for you having that experience. We are also announcing a design and build Lego competition for innovation for to our students, faculty, staff, and alumni. So we are doing a design and build Lego competition over the summer. We look forward to those of you who want to build teams of 2 to 3 people to bring that and go ahead and register for that in the chat. Nakaya can put that in the chat as well. So without too much more delay, I am so honored today to introduce a really wonderful alum and contributor to Iowa State in many ways. His brain, his expertise, he's helped us with admissions. He's talked about our university. He's spoken to some of our innovation students. His name is Dr. Gopi Katragadda. He holds a BE degree in electronic engineering from Bangalore University and an MS and a PhD in electrical engineering from Iowa State University. He's the founder and CEO of Myelin Foundry, an AI company with a vision to transform human experiences and outcomes in wellness and media and entertainment, which is just a huge scope. But once you hear his presentation, you'll understand why he can approach things from such a big picture. He is so impressive in how he talks about the scope and scale of things and brings them into some sort of unified umbrella. I am just really thrilled to introduce Dr. Gopi Katragadda. And Abram, why don't you kick us off?
Well, thank you. First of all, we'd just love to hear a little bit about what you have going on now and introduce those members of our audience who aren't familiar with your work, what you're working on. And then a little bit about your background. How did you get to this point? And I know that you've done a lot of really exciting things, so maybe you'll hit a few highlights. But feel free to take it in whatever direction you'd like to in this open first introduction. Welcome.
Thanks, Abrams. I'm hoping that I'm audible. Could you confirm that, please?
Yes, we can hear you great.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So thanks for the question. Right now, what I'm working on is quite exciting. Like Karen mentioned, it is in the area of media and entertainment as well as in wellness. The idea being that we are looking to bring AI to the edge being as close to the consumer as possible, as close to the data as possible, and work on complex unstructured data such as video, images, and sensory data. So in the case of media and entertainment, what we are doing there, our product is allowing transmission of low resolution video with a low bit rate, which means each pixel is carrying lesser information. But at the edge, we ensure that the experience is unmatched to the device's fullest capability. So what that does, of course, is save the cost of travel of the video file, which is transmission of the video file, and as well as save on the carbon footprint. So whatever we do, we want to keep in mind that innovation for the future will be for human health and comfort, but will also be conscious about the planet and future generations. So that's one aspect. For wellness, what we are doing is at the edge, looking at non-invasive data such as bioimpedance, data such as heart rate variability, and include in it pictures of the eye or the skin or the tongue, and combine that information in a meaningful way to give information on aspects such as chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation is a precursor to chronic diseases. And chronic diseases are all diseases other than infectious diseases pretty much. So that's a pretty big scope, but we can also address acute inflammation, which is then the infectious diseases as well. So doing that at the edge in this case would mean personal data is kept personal. You don't need to go to the cloud. You're not sharing your data anywhere. The inferencing is happening at the edge. How did I get here? The story, of course, goes back to Iowa State, and we'll use your next set of questions to answer that. But my master's at Iowa State was funded by NASA. And it was looking at heat exchanger tubing in the space shuttle main engine, and looking at eddy current sensors and using AI for classifying those signals, and looking for different kinds of defects as well as the good condition of the heat exchanger. My PhD was funded by the Gas Research Institute, which was looking at something called PIGS. PIGS as in not the Iowa pigs, but pipeline inspection gauges, and they were devices which were put into the pipes with brushes, and they were pushed by the product, oil or gas, as they collected data as they went through. And the reason they were called pigs, one of the reasons it said, is that they made squealing noises as they went through. But I think actually it is because it's an acronym for pipeline inspection gauges. Anyway, that again included AI sensors. So for me, the wellness aspect was an adjacency to use AI on sensory data as it relates to human body. And from a media and entertainment standpoint, we were dealing with images, dealing with videos as it relates to industrial applications. So to be able to deal with video as it relates to media and entertainment was not a big stretch. But along the way, I had various other experiences which I'll chat about during the course of the discussion.
Wonderful. Well, I think that's a great introduction. I would love in a minute to hear more about what you're doing with Myelin Foundry, and kind of dive into some of the technical challenges there. But one of the questions we've been interested with all of our visitors on this forum is, how did you come to the path to be an innovator? What were the experiences in your background that led you to take on challenges that others might not have? What are the turning points or mentors who helped shape you into the person you are today? So we'd love to hear a little more about that.
Yeah, so Abrams, if I can share my screen, and if you don't mind, it'll help me be more efficient. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to talk a little bit about careers and innovation and the journey of becoming an innovator. Of course, my stint at Iowa State was a critical starting point. We'll talk about that very shortly. But also, I wanted to talk about the fact that we are at a very interesting, very exciting junction in terms of being careerist, a person looking out into the future and determining what he or she will be doing to participate in the society, to contribute to the society, while also making a living and doing other things as well. It is an interesting point because we are truly in what I would call as a hybrid normal. Digital, right from when we started writing down what was purely oral, yeah, the digital journey had started. But today we are even making digital our physical presence like we are doing right now. In another time and era, I don't think this would have been so acceptable for me to be presenting from India on the internet. But technology has not only made it possible, but the pandemic has made it almost a requirement. So jobs are going to change, but it's all good in my view. As a careerist, as a person who's going to be in the workforce or an entrepreneur, these are the things that we need to know is that the person who will be successful is a continuous learner. Anything that we learn at Iowa State is a good starting point. What we need to learn is to learn, and that also is something that you pick up very well in a place like Iowa State. You become a storyteller and an artist. No longer can you sit at your desk and hope to be having a great career. You need to bring your concepts, your innovations in a manner that are understood and you can sell them. And in order to be an innovator, you need to be an artist. You need to bring your right brain to bear, and all of us have right brains. So we're all artists if you choose to be. We need to understand that deep relationships are important, of course, and we always knew that. But also in this age, leverageable weak ties are extremely critical. Malcolm Gladwell talks about it, but I think it's even more important in a world which is hybrid. You will have deep relationships, but they will be limited. You cannot be successful only on basis of that. So you need to bring the weak ties to bear as well. You need to be connected to the planet. We have gone beyond point of return in terms of the damage which the planet has gone through because of human contributions. So it needs to be on the horizon for whatever we do. And as leaders, as people in the workforce, as entrepreneurs, we learn to be custodians and not owners. We need to work with influence, not authority. And that's how we are going to lead our careers. So I just wanted to flash this, Abrams, um, my career started off at Iowa State. And I always present this way. And it's not just about what you learn in the classroom, of course it is, but I had a wonderful major advisor, Dr. William Lord. He put us in front of the customers, and it takes a lot of guts to take an international student and put him in front of the top researchers of NASA. But he did that, and I keep that close to my heart and do the same. I take bets on people who are on my team today. But really, that's how creativity is unleashed. One of the ways, which is being right in front of the customer, taking the heat when things are not going well. And at the same time, he always gave the credit to the students when we delivered. So creativity and expertise is where it all starts, the journey in terms of skills. But also, as part of Iowa State, I was the president of the India Student Association, part of the Student Union Board. I founded a couple of organizations, Sitar being one, Society for Indian Traditions and Arts, and I was also a radio jockey. So it is critical to hit the ground running as a leader in your career, that you are also doing leadership activities all the way through. So you don't do it for that reason, but it is very difficult to suddenly say, okay, I'll lead people when you've never done it all through your life. So it is important for those with leadership aspirations to realize this. You don't have to be a manager. but you have to be a person who will influence, at least on the ideas, to be an innovator. You see at the bottom, I've listed the skills that you build along the way. Creativity and expertise continue all the way through, but as you get more responsibility for customers, you need to bring in that customer focus. You might start off with being responsible solely for a project, especially in research projects, but eventually you will have to work in teams for greater contributions. And critical things to learn there is to be able to respect everyone for how they are productive and how they bring their selves to bear, technically and as a team, and not expect everybody to be a mirror copy of who you are. Diversity is very critical. Diversity of thought is what makes innovation happen. As you go further and become an influencer, a manager, you need to be a very clear thinker. You need to be able to communicate crisply. All the struggles that are in your mind from the right brain need to be processed and put through the ringer of the left brain for you to be a great leader. You still need both, but you need to be articulate and communicate in a crisp manner. You need to be able to connect to the external world, and you need to be inclusive, because you'll become a one-over-one leader. To be innovative when you're a one-on-one leader is different than you are when you're a manager, and it's different when you're running your own projects. Happy to
Dr.
answer
Gopi,
questions on that as well. But this
Dr.
cycle
Gopi,
repeats.
Dr.
Yes.
Gopi, I might reflect here, because you're this is so brilliant, really, how you've organized and orchestrated this. I don't want us to pass over it too quickly, because one of the things that I am very aware that you have done is you've been really deliberate in mapping this. And one of the things, was this a skill you started with, this capacity to map and overlay these really critical? So you have that technical path, right, which is linear. But in addition, you have that kind of storyteller and innovator path, those skills and those matching influencing roles that you're aligning with this chronological, like technical path. Can you talk about how did you learn, and how does one go about thinking this way and learning to map your path this way?
Thanks, Karen. Thanks for helping me highlight that. All of us have to learn. So it's not that the first time we stand up and speak, we are all confident and clear in the way we articulate. I think what helped me was a few things. One is writing. Coming from India, writing is not something that we normally do. Most of the folks from India, and this is good info for the teachers as well as for students, is that work on memory. Some of us do have great memories, but that's also the Achilles heel, because we do not write things down. And writing actually helps you become a better storyteller, better articulator. It clarifies your own thoughts. It helps you collaborate with others, of course, but it helps you collaborate with yourself. And that is even more critical, because when you are in depths of learning, you are a different person. And when you 2 weeks later go back to the same topic, you're not the same person. So unless you have written it down, even then you lost information. But if you have written it down, you have retained 80% of what you were when you were right there in the zone. So I had to learn to do that. And I also had to learn to accept that I will not be perfect each time I articulate. And it is some time before I started forgiving myself for making mistakes. The mistakes I would forgive myself are for maybe not being as articulate, but I would really sweat it. Even now I sweat it if I am not correct with the data. It's okay to say I do not know. But if I give wrong information, it's still okay maybe, but that's what really I put an effort to avoid doing. So I talked from a vantage point which is mine. So I do not have to compete with somebody else, but I do have a vantage point which allows me to be comfortable. And that's the vantage point where I will not be worried about being wrong, because whatever I say comes from the depth of my experience or depth of my learning. I hope I answered that, Karen.
Oh, brilliantly. I just want to reflect on those points and reflect them back. Capturing your experience, clearly documenting them so that you can chart the lessons that you've learned, being forgiving of because innovation requires risk and it's not going to be done perfectly. And to give up the opportunity because out of fear of not doing it perfectly is not the best thing, right? And then also speaking from your own vantage point so that you're not, kind of co-opting an experience and presenting yourself as an expert, but presenting yourself as having the experience and owning your part of the experience so that you can participate with some integrity. Is that fair?
Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks, Karen.
Yeah, the lessons, what I'm really enjoying, Dr. Gopi, is that you are weaving the human story, our human story, which is really at the core of every innovation story. And even though you've been wildly successful technologically, and even though you've had this fabulous career and you're innovating in so many arenas, you're a writer, published author, you're a leader of a foundry, you're doing all these things, that human story underlines all of it. So that's what I find so profound. So please continue.
Thank you so much. So Karen, the rest of it and Abrams, I'll summarize saying that you repeat these areas of learning. So it's not that you do not take a step back in your career. When you make a major move, you're again going back to square one, square zero, depending on how big the move is. If it's a geographic move and a move into an adjacent area, it's a different story than moving just into new geography. But the cycle times are shorter, and it's okay to take a step back in your career so that you can run and jump. And that will happen a few times. And even now, when I get into a startup mode, from being a group CTO for $100 billion company, that's a step back, but it's a step forward in many other ways. But I'll also like to highlight that volunteering throughout is something which I have benefited from, but more so, it's about not waiting for retirement to give back. You can give back all the time, and that is critical. And the skills you need to be building by working at least one area, at least 20% of what you're doing anytime, even now, for me, is something which I do not know and I'm not comfortable with. And that's how I think we will be innovators and repeat innovators, not a one-time flash in the pan. So just let me stop sharing again and come back to the questions.
And I think Dr. Gopi, Nikaya here, I think that this is a great time to talk about one of the questions that we have. In your first slide, you talked about the 2024 careerist, and you talked about the importance of being a storyteller and an artist, which I thought was brilliant because I don't think a lot of people see themselves as storytellers or artists, especially maybe our students who are in STEM fields. And so I think it would be interesting if you could talk a little bit more about how everyone can be a storyteller and an artist. And that connects back to a question that we have here from someone named Alok. And they want to know what, according to you, are the key ingredients for impactful storytelling of a particular technical problem or solution. What's important when you're telling a story to leaders? How do you string that together? What are the key elements that you should be including when you're telling your own story or the story of your product or your business?
Thank you very much. Nakuya, is that how I say the name?
It's Nakaya. You're very close.
Nakaya. Nakaya. I can say Nakaya.
And
So Nakaya, thanks very much for the question. I think the storytelling aspect of it is to be comfortable in your own skin and to pick up areas of a discussion and leading the discussion where you are the right person to be doing that. So I'll give you an example. I was asked to talk about inspection technology for refinery plant, and we had developed a wonderful porcupine, and this porcupine was basically multiple sensors which went into a sleeve which sat in a pipeline which was placed in a refinery plant. So from a technical standpoint, from the electrical engineer that I was, I could definitely talk about it. But I had never been to a refinery plant. I'd been to boilers, I'd been to power plants, but I had not been into a refinery plant, which is different. And this was a story and technology articulation I had to do with the biggest topmost leadership in GE. At the annual conference, and fortunately or unfortunately, all eyes are on you, and it will make anybody nervous. But really what was important for me to do was go to a refinery plant and feel the oil, put my hand on the components and hug the plant. And after that, that was my shield. 99.99% of the audience had not been to a refinery plant. I had been. So I could tell the story. I started off with the story about the plant. In fact, there the story was that GE had purchased Betts Dearborn company, which was providing chemicals into refinery plants. And GE was a big, massive company providing equipment. And the Mangalore refinery plant, they were not at all happy with GE because GE was trying to sell them equipment which they didn't need, and not the equipment that we were making at that point of time, but overall. So to be able to bring a nugget of truth from the source into an audience, most of who would never have a chance to go to the Mangalore refinery plant, even in being in India, going to the Mangalore refinery plant is very arduous in terms of the journey. So being a storyteller is to tell your story, is to be part of that story and bring that, and you will always be able to tell that story very well.
wow, thank you so much. I think that's interesting because what you were able to experience something that others in the audience had not. And in a way, you were being a trailblazer, but you were also saying, if I can do this, and I was able to get through it, or I was able to travel to this area and do whatever it is, and I'm coming back with this experience, then we can do it as a group. So in a way, you're kind of removing that veil and getting other people on board in the process. Thanks for sharing that story.
Thanks.
If I might jump in here, I'd love to hear you follow up on something that was in your chart. I think for a lot of undergrads, you know, there's this horizon of expectation that fits with that creativity and expertise piece you mentioned that carried through all your roles. But then when you start to talk about things, I noticed that as you gained leadership positions, you started to talk about external focus and inclusiveness. I think that those might be murkier concepts for some members of our audience, and I'd love to hear you expand upon why that's so important for a leader and what does it mean in terms of things you do as a leader.
Yeah. So I think it's extremely critical that as we grow, we bring in that ability to bring knowledge from outside, not be incestuous. We wouldn't be innovative for long term if we are not open to thoughts from wherever they come, ideas from wherever they come. We'll have to pick the right idea and take it into our products and make it into something that we can generate revenues from. However, it remains the role of the leader, because the opportunity is greater with the leader, to bring those challenges which are there in the industry to the team and talk about if we can do it. Even today, if you look at wellness, for example, the ability to bring in that external focus and say that, look, diagnose and cure is there. We can do it better with AI. But really, if you're doing AI, do you want to do it on old technologies such as MR and CT, and expensive technologies such as MR and CT? Or is there a way to leverage miniaturized sensors and bring AI to be able to detect diseases even before they occur? So we move from diagnose and cure to predict and prevent. So be it working relationships with faculty at Yale, or be it understanding the challenges at the hospitals, all members of the team will not be able to do that. They will not have access. But maybe because of past experiences, connects, and great friendships, I can walk into a few of these places and bring back that experience and enable everybody to be as much an innovator as they can be.
If I could follow up on that, that was a great answer. I love the idea that you're talking about looking further afield for opportunities for innovation, bringing in those connections, and supporting people on your team. I wonder if you might also connect. You talked a little bit about using 20% time for volunteering, and I saw some really fascinating experiences. One that leapt out at me was directing the public radio in Texas. I wonder if you'd talk a bit about how. Why are those experiences important? And what are some ways in which they maybe unexpectedly helped you take the next step individually or to add to your organization?
No, absolutely. Few examples from my most recent roles that I play. So one is that, of course, I am the founder, CEO of Myelin Foundry, which is my main job. I'm also the trustee for the Institute of Engineering and Technology, and also play a role with other organizations. One of them happens to be a social entrepreneurship organization called Nudge, which is very deep in what they do. So let me tell you that I mentor startups which are working in the area of social impact. As an example, one of them is looking at bringing bite-sized educational modules which the teachers can use YouTube to send across to their students, but very easily put in quizzes in various spots so that they can ensure that the students are actually going through the videos and answering the quizzes and learning in the process. But really, by mentoring them, I've also learned things that we can do in the media and entertainment space, because we are also dealing with video. They're also dealing with video. Not only that, I can bring my efficient transmission of video, which is more required in rural settings, to these folks in edtech space, and bring back some of their thoughts. Of course, need to be careful about IP and make sure that we are not stepping on each other's toes. But as you go through your career, you figure out how to do this in a manner that's beneficial to everyone involved. So there is a direct relationship of how you can bring various aspects of your life without a barrier between them. So in a way, for me, it is not about work-life balance, it's a work-life continuum. So various roles that I've played have actually merged into each other and helped each other, always, including the time I was at Iowa State.
Yeah. I would like to follow up on a couple things, Dr. Gopi. First of all, what strikes me is this idea of conversion, that you bring others with you, that you move people from one space to a space that they couldn't even begin to imagine. And that's very hard to do. That's changing beliefs, habits, patterns, behaviors, culture. Can you share a little bit as an innovator how you have been able to do that? Some key qualities and key behaviors that you have espoused. Did you hear me?
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, there was a little bit of a break in the video, so I was waiting to see if you had completed, but I did get it. So few things I'll share, Karen, before I share a few slides, if that's okay with you.
Yes.
Yeah. So you hit upon the most challenging aspect of being an innovator. You cannot be an innovator all by yourself. Typically speaking, you need a team. Even Edison needed a team. It is important to be able to take the team along with you. A few things which I learned along the process is that it's difficult to do it only basis culture. So you will have to hire correctly as well. So your journey of the team, if you have the luxury of doing it that way, starts with hiring the right team or recruiting the right team if it is internal as well. And then ensuring that the culture is right, which includes being transparent, which includes a high level of communication, which includes the allowing the ability to fail during the idea phase. But it includes the knowledge that once we pick an idea, there's a great deal of passion and we will succeed through team effort, and we will pivot in the journey as we go forward. But we will get there, and then when we are most successful, we will change and work on the next product. So that's been the create with freedom, nurture with passion, and change with detachment. That's the cultural aspect, which it's simple. It's 3 actions: create, nurture, change. The mindsets are unique. You have to create with freedom and give that environment. When you are nurturing, it is with passion. Here you bring in constraints so that freedom is no longer just the same way it was during the create phase. You need to here be able to tell your story, bring in the funds, and move forward despite the constraints and hurdles. And of course, your change is with detachment. Yeah, even if it is your own idea, like as an example, the let's say the Sony Walkman, you had the thought process about an MP3 player, you did not use it, somebody else will disrupt you. It's an old example, but it still works.
Great.
Dr. Gopi, I actually have a follow-up question, if you don't mind. You talked about building the right team. If you were to assemble a team, let's say you were starting another company, what are those characteristics that you would look for in those team members? And then you also mentioned allowing the ability to fail. I'd like for you to dive into that a little bit more too. As a leader, how do you create a safe environment? So I guess the question is 2 parts. How, as a leader, how do you get the right team together? What are you looking for? And once you have that team, how do you safely allow them to fail? What does that look like in practice?
Yeah. Thanks, Nakaya. The approach I'll give you, but I'll also start with an upfront statement that while we hire, and if we have an expectation that we will always be perfect, there is no way that's going to happen. You will make mistakes, you will make hiring mistakes, but the goal will be to minimize the hiring mistakes. Mistakes are those which cannot be fixed. Many times you will be able to get to a better state and deliver very well. So the team has to be diverse. So in that way, you bring in people with different mindsets, different cultures. It is the right thing to do, and it is okay. So what is important? What is important is that we need people who can work together. We do not need heroes. We do not need people who want to do everything all by themselves and take credit. And you might get 1 or 2 star products in this manner, but for a sustainable company, you need those players who are good, need not be geniuses, but who are extremely good at teamwork. And even then, teamwork issues will crop up, but the ability to fall and stand up and hug each other and move forward again, that's what you want to make sure you're hiring for. Many times the mistake is hiring for an exact match on the role which is out there from a skill set standpoint. You can very well be better off by going even for an adjacency, as long as there is the ability to learn and the ability to work in teams. You'll be much better off being an innovator. Um, your second part of the question was, once you have the team, how do you give a safe environment for failure? And here's the thought there, Nakaya, is that um, the critical thing is to encourage everyone to fail early. And that is what is fail safe, right? So as engineers, we have the greatest of capability to say success is always round the corner, and we can tell the greatest of stories and make it sound true. But also you learn along the way that, okay, not all of them here might be engineers, but as leaders also, the important thing is to acknowledge that an idea's time has not come, put it in the back burner very quickly, so that not too much money has been spent on it. Otherwise, you will go into a trap of always trying to project something which is not and not to be. So that is the most critical aspect of the cultural environment that you need to set. And even then, sometimes we'll fail late, which is okay. The percentage will be low as long as the team is working towards the success of solving the challenge, and it is not about the success of one idea.
I'm eager to see more of your slides, Dr. Katragadda, because the models that you draw are so helpful for visualizing how we approach this innovation opportunity. Can you share more?
Surely, Karen, thank you so much. Some of the things which I talked about is what I'll be sharing again, but let me give it some meat now. So I talked about the create with freedom, nurture with passion, and change with detachment. These elements, I think, are critical for any company to be innovative, but the way you create, the way you nurture, the way you change are going to be very different for each company. So the important thing as individuals as well as companies is to realize that it's not a formula based approach that will get you there. You have to be successful on your own strengths, on your own culture, and on your own team's backs. So each one of these are examples. So 1 through 6 are examples of creating, 7 through 10 are 11 are examples of nurturing, and 11, 12 and 13 are examples of change. I'll quickly give you some idea with the examples from companies. I've been associated one way or the other. In many of our trainings, we travel to companies and spend time with them. So these are more than the companies I've been with. So that's how these stories will flow. So as an example, one way to be creative is to live with the customer. And the best place to learn this is from the FMCG industry. As an example, Procter and Gamble created diapers, not these diapers, created diapers for the Chinese market, sitting in the US, and saying that Chinese market is a cost sensitive market. So let's make cheap diapers and we'll be able to sell many diapers because of course there are many kids in China. And so we should be able to have a runaway success. Excuse me for a second. So they did that. And much to their worry, the diapers did not sell because these were the kind of diapers the Chinese were using. These diapers were called Kai Dang Ku. I'm sure there are Chinese in the audience. I'll be pronouncing it wrong, but the images are correct, and the fact that they're split in the middle are also correct. So when the baby squats, the baby is not wet. And so no diaper rash. And as parents, all of us know that no matter what we do with Western diapers, we end up having diaper rashes. So the Chinese customers were not willing to give up their hygiene in their perception to a product which would give diaper rashes. So Procter and Gamble didn't stop there. They then sent their executives to live with the customers. They did, and they figured out this issue with daytime diapers. So then they realized that they can go and produce nighttime diapers, which are 8 hours, which have to last 8 hours rather than 4 hours. So they have to be more expensive actually. But they advertise saying that your babies will sleep better, you will sleep better. And many marriages fail during this phase because it's a question of which parent will wake up to take care of the baby. They went in with this nighttime diapers, and within a year, 90% of Shanghai's babies were using them. So it was a runaway success at that point of time. But they continued and used different methods to advertise, including not only your babies, not only you sleep well, your babies sleeping well means their cognitive abilities increase. So you'll have smarter babies. This was work done with Chinese university. So they continue down that path. Today they're fighting the premium battle with Japanese diapers. So the story doesn't stop. Many times when business schools go and create case studies, my pet peeve is that they just stop it somewhere where it is convenient to give a lesson. But really, as academic folks, we need to make sure we are looking for that truth. And the truth is that you have to always be with the customer and get insights. So I'll move faster on the rest of it, but each one has as deep a story to tell. Intel is a great company to study how they moved markets with a chip. Normally, the computer maker should decide what the chip should do. But in this case, the chip makers decided what the computers would do, because there are people like Moore who said every 18 months the transistor density will double. While that's not the case anymore, even today, the density of decisions per unit area of silicon chip doubles. So a slight variation to the language, but it still holds. Steve Jobs connected the dots. He brought in multi-typeface fonts because he took a class in college in graphic arts, and he throughout his life he never let any part of his life go waste. He brought it into his products. Today, if iMac exists and Steve Jobs is no more, it's a false statement, because Steve Jobs exists in the iMac. That is why it has a GarageBand, which is a professional grade music software. It has iMovie, which is a professional grade movie making software. Before him, you couldn't make music or make movies on your computer. He said, if I like it, everybody should want it. And he put it, and it still is there. And your iMac, and I have an iMac sitting right next to me, that is Steve Jobs. He is alive. He was a difficult person to work when he was alive. Maybe he's more easier to work now that he's in better parts of the world. Microsoft setting aggressive goals. These are all ways of being creative. You cannot be creative if you're setting soft goals and, as they say, smart goals, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. Those are okay for management schools. But if you want to be an innovator, you set goals where you will be a hero if you succeed or you fail. It's okay to fall short on aggressive goals rather than set yourself goals which you'll easily exceed. This is for innovators. Developing the voice of the future, and that's where somebody like an Airbnb can say that somebody will be willing to share their bedroom and somebody will be willing to stay in such a bedroom. I wouldn't have thought about that, to be honest. The day would come where I would do that. I have actually been in all formats of Airbnb, and I can see why this is going to be a model of the future. Pandemic is a short-term detour, but this is developing the voice of the future. 3M communicates all the time, and that's why a failed adhesive became a post-it note. So those were elements of creativity. But like I said, it's not sufficient to be an idea person. I've seen many failures in individual careers because they think that they're idea people and they worry why the company is not supporting them. That is because you have not invested enough of your sweat into taking that idea into the end. And if you do not do that, nobody else will do that. And hence there is a nurture phase, which is even longer than the creative phase, more onerous, more difficult. but more satisfying at the end, because you have taken your idea into the market. So focusing on the action, you learn from GE. Working as a team, you learn from the East, company like Toyota and their Toyota production system. The VP is at the bottom of the organization chart, not only graphically, but really that's how they work. I have walked Toyota production system shop floors with the managers, with the VP. The VP will stop walking when the shop floor worker is walking across, because the management is there to support the shop floor, not the other way around. Think and deliver, scale, learn from China. The ability that they have to deliver scale is large. US has a great ability as well. But really, if you pick one of the two, you pick China on this point. Build and leverage trust. My old company, the Tata Group, 66% of the earnings of the Tata Sons, which is the parent, goes back into charity. And this is what I talk about, finding your center, radiating goodness and being authentic. You might think, what has this got to do with innovation? There are times during innovation where you need money, where you need trust, where you need the team to be with you. And if they do not trust you, that will be the last chapter of your story. If they trust you, there is no end to your story. Southwest Airlines, not all of us like Southwest, maybe I like them. They celebrate small and big wins. If you've been on their aircraft, they're singing and dancing. I love it. Innovation happens in an environment of optimism, and every small and big wins get celebrated. Last two areas in change, this would be fail early and iterate to success. I mentioned it. Pharma is a great place to learn. 95% of the experiments in pharma fail, but the goal in pharma is not to stop failure, but to fail early, so that the amount of money put in behind that failure is not too much. And even more so now than any other time, it's important for the leaders to be able to say, I do not know, but I know how to figure it out with your help. And having that authenticity as well as vulnerability is critical in being an innovator. If you know it all, you will not innovate, period. And then comes the ability to disrupt yourself. Netflix is a great example. They were disrupting the market when they brought out Myelin CDs, when VHS tapes were being rented out. But straight off the bat, they were disrupting themselves by looking at sending movies across the internet when the internet did not have bandwidth to be able to do exactly what they were trying to do. This was even 15 years back. So let me pause there, Karen. I'll use the rest of the charts if required. Let me pause there and see what the questions might be.
What I am very much appreciating, Dr. Katragadda, is the way in which you map. Can you put that last slide back up?
Surely. The one with Netflix?
The one with the, the last one you just showed.
This one?
Yes, that one.
Is it this one here?
The next one.
Or, oh, okay, sorry, yeah. This or no?
This one, yes.
This.
Yes. Yeah, I am very interested in understanding where you start in this big. So we have students that are really engaged in big challenges, that really want to look at, how do I approach this? I have ideas, but where do they start? And how should they vet and grow and build their idea? Then that allows that idea to really take shape in a very constructive way, so that they know they're headed in the right direction. Where would you recommend they start? Because on your next slide, it's the next slide that you showed with all the,
Thanks, Karen. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think this allows me to cover this slide very quickly as well. Yeah, to be able to look at innovation, there are two ways, which is technology push and market pull. And most of us realize this, that the most innovative companies use technology push only 20% of the time. And this, we are talking about companies like Apple, the companies which have basically brought the latest technologies to bear. They are still pushing technology only 20% of the time. 80% of the time, they're understanding the trends, understanding the market needs, and then understanding which technologies will serve this market needs. But also there are many models, Karen, that you and the students will be familiar with. As an example, there is lean startup. The lean startup model is latest avatar of many models that you can put under that generic umbrella, including design thinking. And including a few other models such as agile as a process. So again, let me repeat: lean startup, agile, design thinking. These are all different versions of the same. What it is number one, to bring the customer into your process throughout, not just when you're done with the product, but even in defining the product. To bring in the nurses if you're working on something for the healthcare industry, or bring in the railway workers if you're working something for the railway industry. So it doesn't matter the grade of the customer, you need to bring in the user of your technology into the process as you go about doing things. So this will ensure more success for your creative outputs. And at the same time, tracking technology as it hits the shore is very tough, because there are too many things happening, and hence it's important to track it when it is science, and then follow it as it hits the shore. You'll be much more comfortable having opinion on which are going to make a difference in the near term and which technologies will take some more time. For example, I do not think that quantum computing will hit the markets for the next 5 years. So if somebody is a startup and working on quantum computing, all the power to them, but the investors need to know that they're not going to be successful for 5 years. So they need to be investing with a 10-year horizon. Very few investors will do that. So you will not find quantum computing on this chart, even though I'm following it very closely. And blockchain did not make this chart until recently. Even now, it's going to take some time for blockchain to make it into the market in a sustainable way, including cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency will come and go, come and go. Of course, people will make money in the meantime on Bitcoin, but for it to be sustainably there, other than you start a blockchain company and have a lottery kind of a system for winning, because most of the blockchain companies will fail today, but few years down the road they will succeed. So you need to develop that intuition. You might be wrong sometimes, but you will be more successful having a short list of technologies which you know will make it. So this is my short list of technologies. They're also still new, but really where you want to focus on is not any individual technology, but the intersection of these technologies. And that is where innovation is going to happen. And that is where you will find the most ability to produce value for yourself and for the market. So Karen, I'm not able to hear you. I hope I was.
No, I was just going to see, Nakaya, I'm wondering if we have any of our listeners who have questions.
Yes, we do. And sorry, for a second you all looked frozen, so I wasn't sure. All righty, so we have another question from Alok. How can we predict where the market or demand is headed, and how frequently should we introspect and pivot as a new company? And then he has they have a follow-up question. Above question is because it looks like the market is continuously changing, or the demand looks to be a moving target. So could you speak to that a little bit more?
Absolutely, Nakaya. Nakaya, this chart of mine, I've used it for 15 years and I've changed it a few times, but really maintains a lot of things constant, right? So if you look in the past 3 years, the main things which have added is social distancing and pandemic as geopolitical trends, and rest of it, few things which those two impact will change. But really, you look at it, climate change has been around for quite some time. Terrorism from 9/11. So if you're in the security business, end of capitalism is about looking at micro capitalism. So the ability to produce companies without too much of a capital. Oil prices have been impacting our businesses forever and ever. Emerging markets, so markets such as India, previously China was in that list as well. These are all geopolitical trends. They have not changed. Pandemic is new, but they have not changed in 15 years, 20 years. Consumer trends, social distancing is new, but premiumization, producing a product which is for a population of one, which means Nakaya, I produce a product which is meant for you. But how can I do that and still mass produce, right? So that's a technical challenge as well as a demand from the market. This is not new. Health and wellness is not new. Digitization is not new. Graying population, the trend is increasing in countries like Japan, but not new. Women decision makers, not new. And so what will happen if these are the trends driving the markets, then the markets will not change so rapidly. What changes is the technology. And that is where I was saying that if we keep watching technology and confuse that with the market, we will get worried which technology to go after or which technology to learn. And what I'm saying is that it doesn't matter which technology you learn, as long as you are able to learn again. And you will have to do that. And you need to also follow the science and track it into technology. Then you will be in control, because one science can result in a few technologies, which for others, for example, graphene is also nano material, right? It is a material which has 100 times the strength of steel by volume. It has 10 times the conductivity of in the nearest metal, or both thermal and electric. So I'm not a material scientist. I'm an electrical engineer, but I know graphene. I know graphene because I've been tracking it for 3-4 years, and I've been tracking it from the time when I was tracking nanomaterials in general. So this becomes another story, and it is something that you will get comfortable doing. It is important that pivoting happens only in the first or second years of your company. You can't keep pivoting all the time. And also you need to build companies which work on technologies for a minimum three-year horizon, because otherwise you will get disappointed with certain hurdles which are there in any new journey. You cannot get disappointed by that. So you need to persist. And if you are a researcher in a university, you need to have a 5 to 10-year horizon. That's a different story.
Thank you so much. And I actually have a follow-up question about that. You talked about pivoting. What are the kinds of questions that people should be asking themselves or their business partners or their team before they start to pivot? Because I think, at least in my opinion, that will be a difficult conversation to have, especially if things seem to be going relatively well and you're pretty sure of yourself. What would cause you to pivot, and what kind of questions should someone ask in order to make sure that they're making the right decision?
Yeah. Nakai, it's a tough phase of the company for sure, and hence it has to be done with care. Maybe there are some processes as well to look at, but the reason why you're pivoting is because some assumption that you've made at the beginning is not working out the way it should. Maybe you're getting customers, but maybe they're not as profitable as you wanted them to be, or maybe you're getting customers, but the revenues are not as high as you wanted them to be. Maybe you're getting customers, but you're also losing them. So there could be many reasons why you want to pivot. For example, in a startup, you want to reach a certain revenue level in 3 years. If that path is not true anymore, then it is important to revisit. And there are few things you can do. You don't have to drop what you're doing. You can zoom in, you can zoom out. You can change the business model. Same technology, same development, but change the business model, change who you're selling it to. As an example, let me take you to something which will help. I think you can see this video hopefully come through. The bandwidths are low on some ends, but what we're doing here is basically taking a low quality video and making it high quality at the end. So I've frozen the video so that you can see it. So we allow the 180p to traverse the bandwidth, and we allow the viewer to have a 780p experience. What is that? 180p is the number of pixels on the y-axis. When we make it 720p, that's based on the quality of the video. But really what we have done here is made the y-axis instead of 180, it's 1080. So 6 times we have increased the number of pixels on the Y. Same thing we did on the X. So we have increased the number of pixels 36 times on the user device without having to send across this file, which means that I can have a video transmission which is much more smoother, less disruptions like we are seeing today. But at the same time, the quality which the user experience is high. Why do I mention that? It's a great product. It's a great technology. We are trying to sell it to OTT players, the people who transmit content like Netflix, like Amazon Prime. And we are able to do that, but it's taking a long cycle time. So we are looking at whether we should pivot and look at selling it to content delivery networks, which is saying that content delivery networks are people who the OTT players are already buying from. They are the people who are taking the content from where they have it to the subscriber. So if I sell this to the content delivery networks, maybe I can ramp up quicker, right? Should I go to video conferencing? Should I go to EdTech? Or should I, since my background is in industrial and I have so much connect there, it is easy for me to sell in the industrial world. For example, in automotive, in car entertainment or in coach entertainment, or I can even put it in the field on CCTV cameras. In this case, I have contacts in various companies which will immediately tell me whether I'm smoking something or whether I'm actually making sense, right? So that is the way you look at a pivot. And every startup, there's no startup that I know which has not pivoted. Large companies also need to think like this.
So Dr. Gopi, as I think about our students and what the journey they have to go on and what they are learning, can you share a little bit about how they should be using their education now? What things should their students be doing? And don't think traditional. We are thinking the opportunities they have at this phase in their life. How should they be mapping and orchestrating that?
No, I think I would love to hear from the students as well what is giving them sleepless nights. If they can put it up in the chat window or otherwise. But my view is this, Karen, is that the uncertainty and various other aspects of the world that we live in, including the amount of information that is flooding individuals, the amount of success that they, or apparent success that they see all around them, and the pressure that causes whether they feel adequate or not, you know, the amount of opportunities that they have, and the need to choose, all of these things in one way are extremely good. But if you look at it in a different way, it causes stress. So first and foremost, I think students need to take it easy and enjoy what they're doing. This is the best phase of their lives. They have to learn, and by learning, I don't mean grades. If they get lower grades in a couple of semesters, it's okay. If they are able to pick up an ability to fall, get up and run, that is what corporates mostly look for. And also that's how you'll be successful as an entrepreneur as well. And also I would caution students against looking at these stories about dropouts. That's the biggest disservice, Facebook or other Microsoft kind of entrepreneurs have done. It's glamorous to be a dropout. That's a genius level individual probably, and with a huge amount of money backing from the past generation, and then you can do whatever you want. But for most of us, we need to be in this mode of being happy, learning, and knowing that we are here to learn and not just to get grades. Grades should come if you're doing it right eventually, but if that's an iterative process, it's okay. It's more important to learn. What you learn is less important as long as you have that life in you, the spark in your eyes, the joy in your heart, and the ability to get up with a spring from your bed in the morning. And there will be days where you don't have that, but in those days, just take it further easy, right? But most days you need to be able to do that. And to be able to do that, it is not about your grades. It's not about which course you took. And it is about being able to learn. But having said that, I'll say that do pick up AI. If I can sell that, artificial
Right.
intelligence will be common across anything that you pick up. It's not tough. AI is about drawing lines and surfaces in space, multidimensional space. So nothing to be afraid of about. Again, there are many people who have done disservice by making people scared of AI. Any technology can be used for harm, but AI is no different in that it can do mostly good. It will not take away jobs, it will change jobs. It will make your life much better. Hopefully, it will give back hours to us where machines are crunching away at a tedious task, that we can be the artists and the renaissance persons that we are designed to be. So nothing to be frightened about AI at all. So the future is for maybe a different set of work rules. The 8-hour workday, 7-day work week was a design of the industrial age when factories started. It has far outlived its use. So going into the future, it will be different. And in that age, to be successful is about being able to deliver in ambiguity in a world which is hybrid. Physical presence is less. So those are the skills which will make you most successful.
Dr. Katragadda, I have a follow-up question because you talk so much about optimism and having that fire in your belly and being passionate and being excited about the work that you do every day. And it's clear that that's been a key element to every single phase of this story that you're telling us, your life story, your innovation story. What kind of questions can students be asking potential employers in order to weed out if that will actually be an employer that will give them that optimism and that spark? Because that seems to be a key element of innovation. So what are the kind of questions that our students could be asking as they prepare to go and interview with these large or small companies to make sure that they actually have an innovation culture?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think great question, Nakaya. The important thing going forward while we look at companies is to make sure that they have a sustainable business strategy. Sustainable business strategies while we work on products which produce good revenues and good profits. They do so while being conscious about the planet. And have that ingrained into their product design and into their philosophies of operating their own plants. So that's one definite aspect that I would look at. From an innovation standpoint, some homework also helps. If you look at how much revenue the company is producing based on products in the last, let's say 5 years, which were introduced versus products introduced 25 years ago, that will give you an idea idea of how innovative the company is, so that it need not mean that it's zero were the products introduced 25 years ago. It's great if a good amount of revenue is coming from those products, because with innovations added to them, I'm not saying the product remains static. It's great, but at least there should be a certain percentage of revenues, hopefully greater than 20%, which are coming from new products based on new technologies, solving challenges which previously were left unaddressed. For example, people did not think about aging population. And right now you need to think about aging population. People did not think about making, let's say, machines for women purchasers. That would be not so smart not to think about it today. So these are things that you can do some homework, and then you'll have further questions on the innovation culture. You can look at diversity. If everybody is 45 to 50-year-old particular kind of male in that company, in your interview board, in the HR, then you need to question where the diversity is. And you can ask that question, what is your diversity? What are your diversity plans? It need not be only gender diversity, it can be diversity of all kinds, right? But without diversity, being innovative is trying to paint a wall with both your hands tied.
Dr. Katragadda, a couple things. I just want to summarize some of the really significant lessons because I don't want them lost as students should be thinking. One, do something with AI. It will help them think differently about how they problem solve. Two is to map their journey so they are capturing their learnings and then expose their learnings. And also leave a trail of false starts and recoveries so that people and employers can see that they have the capacity for resilience and recovery and kind of reinventing themselves. So those experiences are not wasted and are important to demonstrate your capacity to be an innovator. There are more pull opportunities than there are push opportunities. So, so really focus on those. And a lot of the push opportunities are human focused and meet human and global needs. So that's a really good place to start. And then also honor people's contributions so that you're not elevating yourself in them. You're engaging and speaking for yourself and speaking from what you know, but also inviting and elevating the contributions of others.
Absolutely.
So what am I missing?
You captured it so beautifully, Karen. How can I say that you're missing anything? Even though it's late in the conversation, please call me Gopi. It makes things much quicker and easier. So I just a couple more slides, Karen, if I can. It'll
Yes,
maybe complete
please.
the thinking. So this is on the wellness side, like Nakaya was asking, if you're thinking about health, if you also think about making it sustainable, think about data privacy. So you're taking non-invasive measures and producing outcomes which normally are obtained only through blood tests. So C-reactive protein, serum protein, and salivary cortisol or cortisol, blood cortisol. Today, you can get only through invasive samples or sending things like saliva to the lab. But if I do these experiments so that I can map using a neural network, the non-invasives and invasives, during the training, I actually do the blood test. But when I finish that, I deploy it. There is no blood test. You put on a wearable and you're getting your chronic inflammation, acute inflammation, stress, and all those readouts, and you can use them for your own benefit. And so that is thinking about the future, thinking about it a little more sustainably, because it's all on your wrist. There's nothing going out, nothing coming in. There's no lab samples. There is no, there's so many things which are reduced. Global, many of the engineers, technologists will play a global role. I think it's important to leverage talent globally. Again, the critical thing there is to be able to connect to the market needs locally. And that will enable the teams to grow. into what they can be completely. And so much of my time with GE was spent advocating that my teams need to be working on the top of the value chain. And these were all the products that they worked on, not a component, not a bit of algorithm, but we will produce the whole thing for the regions that we serve. And India is not the only region. We serve India-like regions, which include Indonesia, which include Sri Lanka, and so on and so forth. So it's important that as you become leaders, as students become leaders, if you want to get best out of your global teams, do not use them for tasks. Use them for complete ownership, and that way you will grow, your organizations will grow. Here's an example. The GE's Lullaby Baby Warmer led us in India to not work top down, which is to take the giraffe, which is on the left, and tear it down, but actually work with the nurses and say what is actually required in India is not all the bells and whistles. We need the warmer. We need a greater access to the tray where the baby is kept. That was required anyway all through, but the original design didn't have it, so we incorporated it in all designs. And if you need an LED phototherapy for jaundice, you keep it separate and bring it over the baby as required. And by the way, this LED based phototherapy was the first. Technically the best, developed in India, lower cost, but we did that because we were pushed by costs, but now it is the standard approach to solving jaundice anywhere. So to be able to solve problems locally is critical, and for India, it is important to leverage technology and innovation wherever it comes from. So I have not hesitated in my Tata role, and I've spent a good 12 years in the US, so I know where to reach in the US. So be it Yale or Harvard, also be it Indian organizations like IITs and Imperial and Israel, Tel Aviv University, we've reached out wherever it is. So again, I don't mean for global teams to become parochial and say we'll do everything here. That's not the intent. You need to reach out and only build on top of what is there. Don't reinvent the wheel. So those were the things which I wanted to share. Karen, very happy that we could do this.
We are just really so grateful. Abram, summary from you.
Well, you know, one of the things I'm just struck so much, Dr. Gopi, about your talk and your insights is how you pull from so many different directions. You're a student of all the things, and you find a way to integrate it in a way that makes sense for the work you're doing. And I do think that that's a great example for our students, that certainly you want to specialize, especially early in your career, in order to develop a core expertise. But the true innovators are also true students of life, and they're keeping track of all kinds of expertise and trends within industry. So thank you for setting such a remarkable example.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Abrams. Thanks, Nakaya. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Spencer. It's wonderful, and hope the students benefited as well.
Well, we also intend to continue to learn from you and with you, Dr. Gopi. And it's been really phenomenal. I know that we have a journey ahead of us with our students. Your visual models are just fabulous for helping us understand very quickly about how to engage with this innovator's journey. So I will be pursuing you about and interviewing you about that a little bit. That would be, I think, particularly helpful for our students in the future. So thank you for your time and energy today. And I just wanted to make a brief announcement today about what to anticipate next. We are having a Radar Ready summer session, 9 sessions over the summer, an hour each. And so students can participate in the development of innovative behaviors and specifically technical skills that will help facilitate and accelerate their progress as innovators. And a lot of those skills were things you talked about, Dr. Gopi. So as we go forward and think about what's next on the horizon for our students, I want you to be thinking about what you've learned today from Dr. Gopi, and also what you're going to do to map your own plan over the summer as you launch into a new year next year. Thank you for attending. Thank you, Nakaya. Thank you, Abram, Gopi, and Spencer. And we will see you on Flagship Friday as we launch next year.
Thank you. See you.
Bye.